Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. I do believe this is the 118th video in our second Master Series, the 67th video in our basic processors, the 30th video in our sculpting processors, and the 6th video on harmonics, I do believe. So in this video, we're just going to go ahead and add the things we've talked about and talk about a little bit so that we can wrap up this sound sculpting segment. The biggest thing you have to keep in mind is a lot of this work is very subtle. So anytime you're adding noise, saturation, distortion, all these types of things, that it can be very subtle, you know? I mean, it's a lot of times not really aggressive. Like my voice, if I have my voice and I start working on it, I might not add a whole lot of noise. And I got two different noises here. I might not add a whole lot of those. I might add very little of two different types of noises. One that's adding analog warmth kind of sound. One that's adding a little bit of sculpting sound, maybe a brown pink noise or something. And you know, and then I go in to do saturation, like some full spectrum saturation, very lightly. And then I do maybe a little bit of even or odd harmonic saturation on top of it for that 3-tier lower end saturation. And then I really work on my harmonics, which I've, working on the adding a bunch of odd or even harmonics, or attenuating the even or odd harmonics drastically to try to sculpt the sound, and then going in there with an EQ afterwards and reshaping it to where it sounds as good as possible. And sometimes it's very delicate. You would think that it would be real noticeable and real aggressive to where it'd be just so noticeable at every step. Well, it's just not sometimes. I've learned that lesson that, I sit there, well, this is just worthless. I'm not getting anywhere with this. Yeah, I'm adding harmonics and saturation and noise, and then I re-EQ it. I don't see no point in that. But everyone adds a little bit of soup to the mix, right? So combined, without it, you've got this bland chicken noodle soup. But you add these 3 or 4 spices, the 3 tiers of saturation, and the harmonics add a little bit, and then working with the harmonics, and then it's this beautiful chicken noodle soup that's just like, oh yeah, dude. And it's like, it's very subtle sometimes, and you really have to get that through your head. So when you start working on things, that as you work with it more and as you get better at utilizing the tools, that you'll notice the subtleties a lot more, to where you get in there and you go, oh no, I want to add a little bit of brown noise on that and a little bit of saturation. I want to add a little bit of odd harmonic saturation, and I want to get in there with Melodyne or my RX, and I want to boost or subtract those or subtract on those harmonics some, or boost with that, using that software to boost them, messing around with it until it's just, oh yeah, just beautiful. And then re-EQing afterwards, to finish shaping the sound. And sometimes you have to do that in different sections. You might do it differently for different sections, depending on how the vocalist is singing, for the main verse that I'm singing, and then for the chorus, then it's got to be done a little differently, and for the bridge, ah, la, la, I don't know, but sometimes you have to work them a little bit differently, which you think you wouldn't, but you will. The better you get as an engineer, you'll notice the subtle differences when you can help something sound better and what's going on with it, that could use some help. You sound great in the verse, but during the chorus, and during the bridge, Bob over there and his chorus stuff, and stuff, or that instrument needs a little help, and saturation or noise or distortion or fucking some harmonic work, The better you get at it and the more you get used to utilizing the tools, the better it will get. So basically, I've told you before that I normally start out with noise, go to saturation, and do my harmonics work. But as a new person, really utilizing these tools, I really suggest you start working with your harmonics first. So you can either get in there with trash, adding harmonics, or using, like Melodyne and RX to subtract harmonics like we talked about. because you get in there and start working with the harmonics first on that and looking for issues, ones you can that are having issues that you want to attenuate and boost, that you can do very easily, or add harmonics to that sound with either something like Trash 2 there, or if you get into Melodyne like we talked about with Melodyne, that you can really get in there and mess with the harmonics, adding, subtracting them or boosting them and things like that to really kind of fine tune it, because they're the most obvious thing that's happening, first of all. Or with Trash, you can also do a Trash. So you might want to think about doing that first because it's the most obvious. And then you're bringing the more subtle things up underneath it, like the saturation and the noise and things like that. So that's my suggestion. Yeah, the better you get, the more you will know, oh no, a little bit of brown noise and that, oh yeah, that'll be just awesome. But that takes time. Your acute listening and your critical listening is very important. We talked about how most of the time, the more out front the track is, the more delicate work and the more surgical work you're going to do. So basically we talked about adding some noise. So I took our vocal here that we have here, and I've basically taken this vocal that we had when we started with, do your magic, make me sound good. And what I've done is I've added first some of that white noise we talked about, and we talked about implementing that, and I added a little bit of this brown, gray, blue noise as a sculpting noise to give it a little bit of flavor. So we can listen to it then. Do your magic, make me sound good. Do your magic, make me sound good. After we've gotten done with that, I go in here like with my saturation. I've taken Trash 2 and my saturation preset that we've talked about, and I've engaged that. I've gone to Trash 2 also. I've added a little bit of odd harmonics. I've also added a little bit of even harmonics here, very lightly, and then I've re-EQ'd it. So basically, I've re-equalized a little bit to add in all the areas, starting with equal loudness contour, and then looking for problem areas, just like you would, because this has gone in equalized, and I've re-equalized it after doing this work. So we basically have this sound that, after we've taken these things into consideration, normally I would tell you as a beginner, work on your harmonics and adding or subtracting, attenuating and boosting, or whatever you're doing with your harmonics. Then go to saturation. Go to adding maybe a little odd harmonic or even a harmonic saturation with full spectrum saturation like we talked about, and then start bringing in your noise, your sculpting noise I would do first, and then the last thing, see if you need analog warmth noise. You might not by that time. You'd be like, oh, well, I got so much crap going on in this audio file now, it doesn't really need analog warmth. I've warmed the heck out of it. And that can be true, but sometimes it doesn't, and the more critical of a listener you get, the more you'll see it. So if we listen to this audio file, first of all, we've done all these things. We've done the analog warmth, we've done the sound sculpting noise, and then we've gone in, add some full spectrum saturation that we talked about, a little bit of odd harmonic saturation, even harmonic saturation, and we've done some equalization. Now, when I went in here, my saturation on this one, I did my harmonics work. I already went into Melodyne and attenuated, and with RX, and attenuated any serious problem issues with harmonics, to where I use those pieces of software to do it, to attenuate harmonics that are problems, and boost it, and you could boost them there also. And so let's say that I've done that there. So, and then in here, I've just added even and odd harmonic saturation to the full spectrum saturation mixed with the noise to give that 3-tier saturation of the noise, the full spectrum saturation, and even or odd harmonic saturation on top of it before I equalized. So we have this sound that we've done all that to, that we've talked about so far in this series. So we have this sound that's coming out. Do your magic, make me sound good. Do your magic, make me sound good. So we've got it like that, so we're going to start adding it in there. I mean, we're not going to go through everything we've talked about so far in our series, but I'm just going to add it in there one step at a time so you can hear it. Do your magic, make me sound good. 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 So you can hear the difference of it, that there's a lot. So if I listen to this you just once dry, do your magic, make me sound good. 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 You can hear the difference. Now, the concept here is it's very opinionated. You may do it differently than me, and you may do it differently for different productions. If I was doing this in a really light, smoky R&B album, or this is for a louder country song or a rock song, I might do this work a little differently. And you might see that you like it to sound a little differently than I do. So it's really hard to say I did that exactly like that, but that exact, and then that worked right, and then there you go, bro. It doesn't work that way, and I'm sorry. I wish I had an answer like that for you, but that's not going to make you that next level master audio engineer. What's going to make you that next level master audio engineer is when you first start out, is you're going in there and you're getting in there with your Melodyne and your RX and you're attenuating and boosting and looking for problems with harmonics or in the audio, in the harmonics spectrum as we're dealing with harmonics, and attenuating and boosting them. And then going in there and taking like Trash 2 or something and adding, you know, your even or odd harmonic saturation the way you like it, balancing it out to where you add maybe just odd harmonics, just even harmonics, a little bit of both, and then that full spectrum saturation the way it sounds good to you. And then, you know, your noises, you're going to look at what kind of sound sculpting noise would really make that fill out and sound really good. And do I want to add a little bit of white pink noise for that analog warmth sound that I've equalized? You know, is that going to sound really good? And then lastly, going in there at EQ so that you come out, you know, the sound of it, if you listen to even just when I kick this on without the noise, you can hear a major difference. Do your magic, make me sound good. 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 And basically you're trying to figure out what you can put in there to complement the sound, which is hard sometimes because sometimes that the configuration and how much you add not only depends on the production, but it depends on the vocalist, depends on the instrument, how they've EQ'd their instrument, how they've put processors and effects and all kinds of stuff, and your opinion, you know, of what it's going to sound like, which just takes time. So don't beat yourself up over it. Don't go just because the first time you use it on a vocalist or whatever that you're just not doing a good job of it. It takes time. Take your time. You know, the harmonic work is the biggest thing. Saturation up underneath it, the 2 tiers of saturation or the 3 tiers of saturation, harmonics, even odd harmonics with full spectrum saturation and noise. It takes some time because those are inherent in every transducer, say the vocals. There's noise, different types of noise. There's different types of saturation, and even on odd harmonic saturation, there's harmonic content at different levels because of the way my transducer is causing the sound to come out, and then my mouth is going to affect that, my lips are going to affect that, everything is going to affect that. Then, you know, does that make sense to what the end product is with all those things in it that comes out the sound? So you manipulating any of them to try to make anything better, you know, it's one of those things that just take time. But you have every component that's in the sound other than frequency and volume modulations and tuning for the most part that you're addressing. Does that make sense? That you have got all those components that you can, you know, attenuate, boost, add, subtract, and you know, and doing filtering to get rid of noise and you know, it's like, so, you know, we talked about cleaning up your files as well as possible with something like RX or an equalization filtering and things like that, and studying that, because the cleaner you can get things as you start manipulating it, the better it is. And the better performance and the better of a capture you get, the better chance that you can make it. Oh yeah, dude. You know what I'm saying? So you really have to take all that into consideration because of the delicate work this can be. If you don't consider that stuff, you're really not trying to be that next level master audio engineer that's just, okay, and then the performance got to be perfect, and then the capture's got to be perfect, and then the filtering and the cleaning has to be perfect, and then I can get to work in my laboratory. I know that sounds funny, but every step in the process got to be that way for this kind of stuff, because it can be very delicate and surgical work sometimes. But if you want to be that next level master audio engineer, you are going to spend the time in these areas. The more time you spend making sure that's done well, that when you just go to mix things together, that bam, oh yeah, dude, because everything sounds great. The vocal sounds great, the guitar sounds great, the bass sounds great, the drums sound great, the violin sounds great, the piano sounds great, the synth sounds great, the idiot in the background, he sounds great, the choir sounds great, everybody sounds great. So when I mix them together, it's like, oh, butter bro. You know what I'm saying? So, the things that we've talked about so far in this sound sculpting are hugely important, besides that capture and that performance thing, so that you can, these are some of the most important things that you want to look at, because those little nuances are going to make a difference, and you go listen to, and there's a learning curve here, and there also is a performance curve. So always keep in mind, you've got Bob. Bob is not a good musician in any way, shape, or form. He can't sing worth a crap. So don't die crying on your mixing board because you can't make him sound like Beyonce. Timmy is coming up a little bit. Jimmy is middle of the road somewhere. Tammy is like borderline. She's getting up there. And Beyonce there, or, Poo Poo Napu from India, he is a virtuoso singer. I mean, that boy is just bad news. He is just, will tear it up, bro. I mean, his range is awesome. His performance, his punctuations, how he uses it, all the nuances, it's like, oh, it's like a dream working with him. Does that make sense? And all those levels that you have to take these things we're talking about and apply them to the best of your ability without going crazy, thinking, I've got Bob the idiot that, he's having fun making music, but I'm not going to make him Beyonce. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be an opera singer. It's just not happening. So what can I do with him to make it as good as possible? Because the better you can make anything, you learn as an engineer, and you can apply these things to better musicians. But there's levels there, and their performance, not just their abilities, their performances also. So you can't kick yourself around as an engineer, especially when sound sculpting and doing this delicate work, because of lack of their performance, because of lack of their abilities, lack of their natural sound. Some people I've seen, they sing, I don't know, to me, they sing, but I don't know that they would be, with a lot of work. They can be. Everybody can be. But some of them don't work that hard, so they're just not there. So don't kick yourself for that. Because if you get dream musicians doing dream performances, your job as an engineer is pretty easy sometimes. You're just like, oh yeah, dude. And when they're not, you're like, no, buddy. But, it's a chance to learn also. So don't kick yourself in the head for that. So I hope you take that and run with it. And, just remember that you've got those two different tiers of noise. You come into that saturation, or a couple of different tiers of, full spectrum saturation, or even odd harmonic saturation, or a combination of both. Working with the harmonics, adding harmonics in there, boosting the harmonics that are there, adding them with RX, or adding them with something like Trash 2 or some other device. Attenuating and boosting them with Melodyne. And there's lots of other tools in Melodyne and RX that can help you manipulate what the sound is sounding like. So don't be afraid to investigate those, because they are manipulating the sound in drastic ways, and sometimes very subtle ways. That's all it needs. And just that little teeny few drops of salt in there, and oh yeah, dude. So don't be afraid to experiment around with that stuff. And your equalization when you're done. After you get done, you may be re-equalizing it and rechecking and equalizing it, because it can make a world of difference. So keep all that stuff in mind, and when you get in your sound sculpting, take it easy on yourself. Try to get as good a capture as you can and as good a performance as you can, and clean them up really well as you can, and take your time doing a good job and listen to the subtle differences with your critical listening and your critical abilities of evaluating what's going on there, what things may need, and mapping things out, you know, so you understand what does saturation look on a track, what does noise look on a track, what does harmonics look, what is the mapping of the harmonics, what harmonics are in sounds, you know, broaden your horizons, broaden your knowledge, become that next level master audio engineer. So when you're doing this stuff, sometimes you might not need a lot of it, sometimes you might need a lot of it in some places, bro, I'm telling you, and sometimes not hardly nothing at all, but you'll have that knowledge so that your stuff will come out better and better and better, and the better you get as an engineer of investigating, experimenting, and applying. So peace, hope, love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video and last video on sound sculpting and your sound with the basic sculpting tools, and I will see you in the next video.